Hi, Hugh. How are you?
I am great. Are you running?
I'm thinking about running. Not yet a declared candidate, and still have some things to figure out. So we're thinking about it, giving it a pretty hard look. But that's all I can say for now.
I've had Jane Timken on. I'll have Josh Mandel on. They're like a half dozen congressmen thinking about it. What makes it attractive, even in the abstract, not yet having pulled the trigger, JD?
Well, as you know, Hugh, I'm very interested in the future of the Republican Party and where the party goes from here. And when I look at what's going on in our country and frankly how conservatives have become put upon by corporate America, I think that there's a need for a voice that just says it very directly, that for so long Republicans could count on corporate America as our allies, and now we're at a place where some of the worst censorship of conservatives is actually coming not from big government but from big business. There just needs to be somebody out there saying that. And so, if I ultimately ran, I think that's the campaign that we try to push, and that's the message we try to talk about.
You have become known as a champion of blue collar America, especially forgotten America, especially Middleton, Ohio, and that goes for Warren in the North and other places throughout the state. You've also been attacked for being that role, saying it's not socially conscious, you lack the appropriate amount of wokeness. Your response to the latter and your pursuit of the former?
Yeah, it's funny. There is this weird theme in mainstream discourse these days that says that the only way to talk about disadvantaged groups is that you have to be talking about non-white people. And I think that, unfortunately, there are a lot of white people. There are a lot of non-white people who are affected by globalization in our modern economy, and we should talk about everybody who's affected by it. And my big thing is look, we've got to have a manufacturing base in our country. There's never been a country that's had a viable middle class unless it's had a successful industrial base. And we've had this elite policy for 30, 40 years that has effectively outsourced our entire industrial base. Of course, President Trump pushed back against that for 4 years. But I think this entire wokeness thing is about silencing people who want to have a good, decent middle-class lifestyle and telling them, look, you shouldn't complain because you're white, or you shouldn't complain because you're privileged, when what that does is just drive a wedge between groups I think who have a lot in common, and if they got together and pushed back against the prevailing orthodoxy, could have a lot of power.
Now, interestingly enough, J.D. Vance, we are at a moment when governors are empowered to implement an industrial policy of sorts aimed at reindustrialization because Congress just gave them billions and billions and billions of dollars. Maryland got $4 billion, and I asked Governor Larry Hogan, what are you going to do with it? And he had no idea. New York City got $6 billion. What would you tell Mike DeWine to do with however many billion, and I would imagine it's around 4 if Maryland got that much. What would you tell Mike DeWine to do with it?
Well, I think there are a lot of high-tech industries that we could be investing in, especially biopharmaceuticals here in Ohio. I do think that's one of the industries that's going to dominate the next wave of innovation. But I also think this is a national problem, that unless you're battling China, unless you're battling a lot of our economic competition in East Asia and Central America, you're not going to be able to solve this problem. And so it really is a national question. How do we preserve good manufacturing jobs? How do we ensure that we still make things here in the United States? States can do some, but this is really a task for the national government.
It is, but when you've got that kind of money, I'm just afraid it's going to be wasted, JD. I'm sure you've seen 100 different programs come and go that are not sustainable. One thing you might do is simply bank it and make it an infrastructure bank, only use the interest off of it. But in any event, I would hope Mike DeWine would call you and other venture capitalists up and ask, is there that kind of community of high-tech people in Columbus that are available to him to think outside of the box of just spend the money?
Yeah, no, I think there definitely are. There are a lot of good people in Ohio who are working on this, and Lieutenant Governor Hugh has actually an innovation board with me and a few other folks who work in this part of the economy. And I do think Ohio is smarter about this than most states. I think Lieutenant Governor Houston has done a fair amount to try to make us a very innovative economy. And ultimately, what we've got to do is just have a discrete view about what we want to do with the money, where we think the economy is going, and not be afraid to pursue those industries. While, to your point, not just spending it because we have it, because I worry like you that this just becomes another boondoggle, but I don't think it has to be.
Now, J.D. Vance, you have been supported indirectly by Peter Thiel, who's put $10 million into a super PAC that is alleged to be supporting you. You can't coordinate with that PAC by law, but you're allowed to tell us, why does Peter Thiel admire you so?
Well, my understanding is also that the Mercer family, Beck and Bob Mercer, have put in a lot of money into that super PAC as well. And I think people who are supporting me recognize that I could offer potentially a fresh voice in the party. And Peter, in particular, has always just been a good friend of mine. And we've been talking about the trade issue, about the deindustrialization issue. Peter was talking about the rise of China in 2012, 4 years before anybody really cared about it, and before President Trump brought it to the political mainstream. So I think there's just a lot of alignment on issues. And if I ultimately do pull the trigger, I'm sure Peter will be very supportive.
I have a suggestion. I'm going to see him in a couple of weeks, and I have a suggestion on how he can lock up a J.D. Vance victory. If you'll become the minority owner with the Dolans of the Indians and pump in $100 million to the Indians, you're going to win in a walk. So all you have to do is persuade Peter to go in there and say, okay, Dolans, how much do you need to sign Ramirez and get Shane Bieber on long-term contract? What are you going to do about the Bengals-Browns divide? Are you going to sign up with one of them?
Well, I'm a Cincinnati guy at heart.
Wrong answer.
I unfortunately am always going to be a Bengals fan. That's not something that should threaten you Cleveland Browns fan these days. But I've never had the intense intrastate rivalry when it comes to sports. I've always supported all Ohio sports teams. I just really hate the Steelers and really.
That's okay. Then you're back in my good graces. Yeah. And aren't you amazed that Ohio University, a junior college, made it into the 64? I didn't even know that they let junior colleges in. JD, seriously, on China, I just finished the book by Josh Rogan. Had him on yesterday. Chaos Under Heaven. We are in. A genuine struggle for supremacy. They are not letting up. They are not giving up. Do you think that resonates with Ohio voters more than any other issue, as I think it should?
I really do. I think this is one of the reasons that President Trump's message actually resonated so powerfully, is because he was talking about the fact that China really was picking our pocket and nobody else was saying that. You're absolutely right. The Chinese have a view towards world domination in economics, in the projection of foreign power. And unfortunately, we've had an elite that's been asleep at the wheel for the past 30, 40 years, Hugh. As you know, the argument from our elites is that if China just got a little bit bigger economically, a little more powerfully, they would democratize, they would become our allies, they would become our ideological friends. And that just hasn't happened. They've managed to become incredibly powerful while maintaining this hostile posture towards our way of life. And so in an important way, I think the China issue is not just about China. It's also about getting our ruling class to rethink its global economic footprint and how we actually attract the industries and jobs of the 21st century. That's a big task. But I do worry sometimes that the China issue becomes just about China when it's really also about our own ruling class.
They are a malign economic force. They are a malign Marxist-Leninist state.